Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Not bad, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Excellent. Great to hear. Great to hear. Adam, we're very pleased to have you participate in our CTO News Thursday vlog series. And I'd like to begin by just asking you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. So thanks very much for the invite. Yeah, I could introduce myself. My name is Adam Leach. I'm a technology leader working in the internet and telecoms space. Most recently was the CIO at Nominet, but had a variety of tech roles throughout the industry over the last 25 or so years, with a real focus on software and software delivery.
Excellent. Great to hear. And what did you study at university? And how did you get into technology?
Yeah, so I studied the sort of very sort of traditional. So I studied computer science. I was sort of a late comer to university. So I sort of decided pretty late on that I would go to university. So it wasn't, I know some people have it all planned out. So I just sort of spur of the moment decided I would go. So I wasn't offered the course I wanted, which was computer science and business, was offered just straight computer science. But I often reflect that I'm really glad that I just did that course and not the computer science business. I think business, obviously, lots of stuff to learn, but you can learn that throughout your career. And it was great to have more of for me anyway, more of a kind of pure focus on computer science, which I think stuff I've learned. I'm very lucky to say that stuff I learned back then is still relevant today. So I still use everything that I learned. So yeah, it was really good a good course and something that set me up well for the career that I had.
Excellent. Brilliant.
Career that I have, I should say.
Absolutely, the career you have. Absolutely. And that brings us up quite nicely, really, to the next question, which is, since 1995, you've worked in various, whether it be established organizations. What do you think has helped accelerate your career?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I've worked at a number of different organizations and different parts of the industry. I don't think I've had a kind of direct sort of linear progression in the tech industry, and I've kind of sort of gone to different companies with different focuses and had different roles. But I think all of them have provided something different for me. I think early on in my career, I was working for Scion and Symbian. It was great opportunity to really hone my engineering skills and to work in a new field of smartphones that was sort of at the time in 1995, a kind of cutting edge of things, although they're commonplace now. So that was a really great, I think, start to my career. I then went on to work at Vodafone, and again, that was a great opportunity. It's great to have those big names on your CV. That was useful and help you kind of accelerate your career, and some great opportunities to work across the industry with all sorts of companies like Samsung and Docomo and some really interesting kind of telecoms companies. So yeah, that I think Vodafone, having those big names helps on your CV. I then went to then Ovum and took a slight sort of sidestep away from kind of the technology coalface and was an industry analyst for a short time. And that was really great. It was great opportunity to hone those different skills. So being an engineer, running engineering projects, being team lead, writing code is a kind of set of skills. What Ovum really gave me the opportunity to do is work on some of those other human skills and other business skills. So I was saying, that focus on studying kind of computer science. Ovum gave me that opportunity to do things that scared the pants off me, to be honest. It was stuff like live TV and presenting to big audiences and all that kind of thing, which really help you in different parts of your career. So I think all of that was really helpful then when you get into the boardroom to have that being able to speak to different audiences and having a kind of different set of skills. So I think that really has really helped me. And then, most recently at Nominet, getting back to the coalface, getting back to leading technology teams, which is what I love to do, and just really, learning those lessons of that you only learn from having to do transformation and to run those large projects. So yeah, I think all of my different companies I've worked for have taught me something different. Even companies that I was there for just a short while. So back in the early days of the early 2000s, I went and I worked for Marks and Spencer, which are a great company. But for me, it wasn't the right thing for me. And I even learned, so I was there for just a short term for 9 months, but even learning by some of those steps of what you don't like can be just as valuable as what you really like. So for me, teaching me that I really want to work for technology companies as well. So it's kind of helped me can then define what I go on to do in future.
Absolutely, and thanks for sharing. I think you've got a very versatile background. You've worn a number of hats, and it just proves that you're able to not only work in sort of the coalface in terms of being an analyst and sort of being at the front end in terms of in front of the customer, but you're also able to do the engineering piece, manage teams, etc., and really look at that agile environment. Yeah. So great to hear. Excellent. Can you just shed a bit of light on microbit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an awesome project. The microbit was a collaboration between a number of companies and launched by the BBC probably about 7 years ago now, and then they spun it out to have its own foundation to run the microbit. And the microbit, basically, I wish I had one here. I should have one on my desk. But it's a small credit card size computer that basically teaches kids the fundamentals and basics of coding, and it's used in the classroom or in outside the classroom to be kids' first steps in learning what's inside a computer and how a computer works. So for me, I got into technology through through a lot of people, I think, born in the 70s and then raised in as a kid in the 80s. The 8-bit computer boom, and that was working with those computers, playing games on them initially, but then the fact that the games weren't that good, and then left you with this opportunity of what else do these things do, and allowed you to get under the hood. And I think with today's technology, although it's so much more impressive, what an Xbox Series X can do for you, but there's no way to get under the hood of it in the same way as you could as a kid in the 80s. And what the microbit does is give children today that opportunity to something that's really accessible, and they can start to build programs and have an effect on see the impact of what they do and how software can affect the real world. So it's a really awesome project. It was originally there was 1 million of them dropped to school children in the UK, but with the Microbit Foundation, which I've been on the board on the last couple of years, has helped kind of deploy the microbit throughout the world. So it's now used across many different countries, by many different schools, and teaching kids to code, which is awesome. And it's been great to be involved with that.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Back in my day, I remember playing Elite, and you needed a cassette player. If you remember the game Elite, and so
I do remember Elite.
Yeah, you can imagine. Yeah,
it's great. It's a great, the great sort of great formative times, and I think it's great. It was great to have the opportunity to play the games, which got you into it, but then having that ability to then be able to program computers, which I just don't think is there today. So we've got to have something that fills that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Okay, so why agile transformation, and why is accelerated software delivery really important for today's organizations' technology roadmaps?
Yeah, so I think software's been at the heart of technology and technology companies for years now, and it's just become more and more important. And I think we've learned over those years how best to deliver software, but it's still really hard for organizations to do. So a lot of companies have adopted Agile, and it's a kind of far better approach to delivering software and brings a lot of advantages. but companies, I think, are still struggling with getting the real benefits of accelerating their software delivery. Companies are still, I think many companies are still struggling with legacy applications and moving past the kind of mindset of getting all your requirements up front done first, getting all your estimates first, and really adopting Agile. So kind of moving beyond kind of just the processes of Agile and the practices of Agile to really getting the benefits of Agile. And I think that's something that companies are still struggling with, although we're sort of many years into that kind of shift and that change. Is still something that companies struggle with, but getting it right is more and more important. I think the software aspect of the technology stack is where the value is created. So getting companies into a position where they can deliver that value faster is just even more crucial today than it ever has been. So that's just an area which I'm just really passionate about, and I just think that it's something that as an industry there's still some way to go for us to get that right.
Absolutely, that balance right. Absolutely, it is, and it is taking time, but we will get there, as I say. Brilliant. Yes. So, what lessons and advantages do you think the pandemic, whether it be delivered to or provided software delivery and outsourcing, that you could possibly elaborate on?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we've all been. I think we're hopefully sort of on the other side of the pandemic. I don't want to say that. I don't know, no expert here, but things seems to be recovering. I think a lot of companies responded really well to the pandemic. So a lot of kind of technology companies, it was an opportunity. They had the tools in place. They could go remote, and it was to a large extent kind of seamless in that respect. And I think that kind of showed that we can work from anywhere, something that I think a lot of people were trying to make the point for many years. And I think the pandemic gave a great opportunity to show that tech functions and tech companies can carry on working in that way. And that's great. I think my observation is, though, that for kind of the operational day-to-day, the pandemic was fine. Working remotely and entirely remotely in the team is great. I think where it becomes more difficult is when you're kind of approaching a transformation and trying to really change what you do and not just do the same things you've always done, because I think those transformations just take people coming together, and I think and it needs people coming together face to face to have the most kind of effective conversations. So I think the real challenge for companies now is that they've adopted more remote and kind of hybrid ways of working, which I think is absolutely right and is here to stay. But then how do we kind of balance that remote work with the transformation in many companies that's needed, and making sure that we can get together and have that ability to work together despite our kind of geographic spread that we have. So I think that's certainly a challenge. I think in some areas it's helped. So I think being able to doing outsourced delivery has become easier. Kind of people part of your remote team has become even easier than it was before, because a lot of us are working remote. So whether someone is nearshore or offshore, they can work with the team. So that's a real certainly been one of the benefits. But I think the challenge that we're now facing is how we strike the right balance of coming together when we need to, and having those real face-to-face conversations when they're needed.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. And that's something that we're seeing as well, at IT Labs. Excellent. Okay, so what can you share with regards to projects that you've worked on that's been successful, whether it be, whether it could be activities in the cloud or that you've been involved in? What areas of activity can you share with our audience as to successes?
Yeah, so I think cloud transformation and adopting public cloud is something that I've been closely involved with, and getting ready, transitioning from legacy applications, running co-located data centers to adopting public clouds, and I've been deeply involved in projects of that nature over the last couple of years. Yeah. So one of the areas that when sort of I've been involved in is transitioning kind of legacy applications to public cloud. And I think really one of the areas that I've really been looking at is how kind of hybrid cloud can help. As a kind of a transitionary step to wholesale adoption of public cloud is when hybrid clouds and when to keep stuff hosted on your own private cloud, and how you make that work together with kind of more public cloud adoption. And I think many companies are in a position where they've got legacy applications and have to think carefully about how they can leverage hybrid cloud, as opposed to just having that kind of single bound over to public cloud, which could be is a big step. So kind of in the kind of agile way of thinking of trying to what's the kind of smaller steps that you can take to get you on that journey, and then working out how you can leverage hybrid cloud to do that, I think is a really important part of those transitions.
Absolutely. It really does require you to identify what systems are critical, i.e. what systems require dedicated connectivity, via, so for example, whether it be a software-defined cloud internet connector, or what requires internet connections, etc. So yeah,
and I think that's exactly it, as you say, John. What's really critical? What do you really need to control, and what do you really need to have that control over? And it's probably not as many applications as you think, but the ones that what are the ones that are really differentiating for your organization? I think these kind of transitions give you the opportunity to highlight those and really focus in. We've all got, no one's got endless amount of resource and capability. So in these transitions, focusing on where the priorities are and what's really mission critical for your organization, I think is really important.
Yeah, excellent. I agree as well. All right. So how do you go about building high performing teams, and how do you get the best out of your teams with regards to
I think that's a great question. Great question, John. So I think for me, it's about making sure you're empowering your team, making sure that they feel like they're in control of what they do. And I think in the technology environment, as a technology leader, you've got to hire people. You're hiring kind of domain experts that are experts in certain areas. And I think my always approach is to try and enable those people to do the best job they can, and giving them that authority to go and do that, and not trying to kind of micromanage what they do and trying to dictate too much what they do. You want to have the people reporting to you feeling like they can make the decisions, have the autonomy to make the decisions. So I think that's, to do that, you've got to create a trusting environment. And you've got to make sure that you create an opportunity where people feel that they're not overstretching themselves, and that they are taking on something that they feel they're able to deliver. Maybe pushing them, stretching them to some degree, but making sure that there's support for people going and doing stuff that maybe they feel uncomfortable with. So I think it's creating that empowerment and that environment of trust is really important. Really easy to say, really hard to do in practice. It's hard to do in practice when we all care passionately about what's being delivered. Everyone has a different view about how it should be done. Deadlines are looming, so it's easy to say, oh yeah, you've just got to trust your team, empower your team, and then everything will just work. But in reality, it's a lot harder to do those things and put those environments in place than it is to say those things. And I think it takes time, and it takes time to build those relationships to make sure you can get there. And I think it's something that you can't do on day one, but something you can keep working on. Is something that you need to keep making sure that you're building that environment day by day.
Absolutely, and that's something that we pride ourselves at IT Labs, in terms of building high-performing teams. Understanding whether it be an organizational tech stack or culture, or knowledge base, and trying to sort of map that in our environment to try and help, whether it be deploy team members as and when needed. So absolutely agree with you. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so what do you do to stay current with technology?
So I think that it's very easy to when you're kind of head down in a job, to kind of focus on what you're doing and not take a look up. So I think my own reflection of it is that you can go through periods of of times where you're not doing as much as you should be doing, kind of looking externally. But for me, it's about continuing to read, continue to stay current with current thinking about how technology is delivered. There's loads of great books on the subject and new ones coming out. And as we learn more about agile delivery and what works and what doesn't work, so staying current with all of that. YouTube is a great resource there's just so much content on there, and really great content that's 10, 20 minutes long to be able to dive into when you've only got a few minutes, and to just get that nugget of information and that insight. And I think the other thing is what I like to keep current with is also practice. So there's kind of reading and then practice. So whether that's practice through kind of as someone who leads engineers, you've got to stay current with the skills yourself, even if you're not deploying those. So I like to stay current with having coding projects myself and doing something in my kind of spare time to feel like I'm still close to what the engineers and the engineers you're leading are doing. And I think that's really really important. And again, harder to do. Easier to say than to do, but something that's really worthwhile to spend the time to do.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing, and that's great to hear. All right. So, what would you say is your superpower?
My superpower? Well, I'm not wearing a super suit under this this t-shirt, but I'd say I was just thinking about this in advance. I think dealing with ambiguity, dealing with the unknown. And I think in a lot of tech organizations and a lot of what we do, a lot of senior stakeholders want that certainty, and a lot of tech leaders and people working in tech have to work with uncertainty. And we're all really, we know where we want to go, but how quite we're going to get there, we don't know. So being able to handle and be comfortable with that ambiguity and that uncertainty is something that I think that I'm quite good at, being able to step back and see the bigger picture. And I think it's really important, a skill in today's world.
Absolutely, it is. It is crucial right now.
So I'm not sure it would. I'm not sure it would appear in any kind of Marvel superhero. Dealing with uncertainty, man. I'm not sure we're going to see that. But yeah, I think that's what I'll go for.
Brilliant, excellent. And that brings us nicely to our closing question, which is, what do you do outside of work, and what do you do in your spare time?
Yes. So this is closely related to what we were just saying. So it's great to be speaking on this podcast, but I also have my own podcast. I'm part of 4 of us. We do a podcast on science fiction. And we've been doing that. It's called 4 Men in a Wormhole. We've been doing it. It was a pandemic project. So me and 3 friends got together during the pandemic and just sort of stuck in our homes and thought what we could do. So we've started to kind of collaborate on this podcast. So we've been doing it for, I think, coming up to 2 years. We're into season 2 now. And yeah, it's great. It's great fun. So it's a great way to sort of tie up sort of my interest in science fiction and stuff that I watch and read and listen to, and then be able to get together with friends and just talk about it. And yeah, it's been a real. It sort of kept me sane through the pandemic, and it's been great to carry it on forward now.
Excellent. Well, Adam, thank you very much for everything that you have shared, and it's great to learn about your podcasts and your areas of interest outside of work. I think a lot of us out there will be interested to learn more about 4 Men in a Wormhole.
Absolutely. If there's one message, one thing to take away.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's an absolute pleasure having you on our CTO News Thursday vlog series episode. And we look forward to speaking with you further in the future, and wish you every success in your next adventure.
Great. Thanks very much, John. And thanks again for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.